Live with just a button push. Do do do. That's the
My
new.
God.
Yeah, that's the theme song now, dude, for Warp Charge Gaming. Do do do. Welcome back to episode 109. I'm George, and Chris is here with me, and sometimes James is here. He's not here right now, but he will be in other occasions, and he has been in the past. We've done this 109 times, and it's not always the same. And in this instance, I'm not live at Battlegrounds like I normally be. I'm at home today, and that's because Chris, I have been studying the ninth edition book because Battlegrounds got their early access copy of the Indominus box set, which is the Necrons versus new Primaris Assault Marines, and of course that has the ninth edition book in it. I have it right here with me. So
What?
now I know it's not crazy. I mean, we get to after seeing seventh to eighth, and now eighth to ninth, we can reflect on how GW does things, and they've been evolving over time. But we've been given a lot of the rules. Over the past few weeks, we've discussed a lot of the rules and have, without even needing to necessarily study the pictured copies from a Russian website or something like that. GW gave us an early access to the fundamentals, and for free, basically. They're going to give that to anybody, and they're getting ready to launch the app, which is exciting and revolutionary. If it's something, it's supposed to be the most foolproof app ever.
There's already been so much shit talking.
Yeah, well, it's pretty cool. They had some things like whenever you buy your paper version, your book copy, you'll have a scannable code that can give you your digital version. Big thumbs up to that to GW.
I agree.
As they update rules, they're going to be taking out old codexes, putting in new. And here's what I thought was pretty wild: is they claim that when it kicks off, you're going to have every single rule that's in 8th edition. All the codexes before they go away are there. And so you'll basically own the rules to everything as you have. And that's I believe that was the app. No, I think you might have to be the subscriber for that. Which they had.
I believe that was in the free, actually.
It might be free. Yeah, you might get everything when you're free. But basically, it was a very affordable price. I think it's about the same as the Azir app, which is for Age of Sigmar, that I am a patron of. So I don't have an issue with the price point as long as the app's functional. There's some cool things, like I love being able to in the Azir app, you can actually take pictures of your own models and have those be represented in your battle scribe as you scroll through in the war builder. I think it's what it's going to be called. But that's exciting, and that's coming out, and we're going to have access to, hopefully. I'm curious at the points whenever they first released it. They said in a few weeks, and previously they had mentioned the claim was by the 11th when pre-orders go into effect. I'm hoping that we're going to have the damn points, because even though I have the whole book here, Chris, and I've read it multiple times and made a spreadsheet, and I'm ready to answer any questions if anybody has any, I particularly... I thought I just got a message from someone that was maybe commenting on the stream. Hopefully we're live and everything's good.
We are.
Okay, cool. Even though I have the book, dude, I don't have the damn points. And, I was really surprised to see, Chris, all these weeks we've been talking, I didn't realize till just recently when they showed it that we have a grand tournament pack, that comes paired with the chapter approved. That was that came out of kind of nowhere. They did a good job at holding their cards tight to their chest, kind of thing, So I'm very curious about that, because after seeing the rules, that was some of the really. I had made a note. I don't have it right on me right now, but maybe I can just remember that what the GW gave us for free on the community page showed us everything besides depth about the detachments, strategic reserves. How how objective scoring, terrain features is a big part. Honestly, that Mike had mentioned in the chat and probably nailed it, is one of the biggest things that we're going to have to adjust to is just utilizing the terrain correctly.
What a big cleat.
Oh cool, we got a big cleat out there. I got to get my damn comments up. Dude, I'm struggling on the struggle bus. But yeah, all exciting things. And there is a lot of information already exposed, but there's still a lot of information to come. And that's particularly that as a tournament organizer, I was very curious of the standard that the terrain that they were going to be showing. Maybe I'll be able to show you in the book here, just like try to hold a page up to the camera here. But the boards were, at first it scared me because they said like every 12 by 12 space, every 12 inches, you would have like a piece of terrain. And they still were pretty vague. That's, I guess, what made me nervous about the core rulebook missions is that they have a lot of suggestions of what you could do, but they don't necessarily lay out a standardized, have 2 forests, have 4 ruins, have 2 hills, have 2 craters, or scatter type terrain. They don't dictate what a common board should look like. Nor in the core rulebook do we don't have the 2 pages of 6 different deployment maps that we had in the 8th edition core. So those classic 8 deployment zones that we're so used to, Spearhead Assault and Dawn of War and Hammer and Anvil, all those we just have these preset mission deployment zones right now, so we can be assumed that the Grand Tournament book is going to lay out these standardized terrain formats, or at least like configurations, as well as maps like deployment zones, that we roll on. I did really like the way that they did the ITC style objectives, except they have 3 categories instead of just 2, maneuverability and killing oriented, and you have to pick one from each of the categories or a mission specific objective. But particularly, Chris, I was thrown off by I've been enjoying and getting so used to the 2020 ITC style that I was hoping, that the deployments, the pre-game setup was similar. And one just to call out, jumping around here, that was surprising is how they did the tactical reserves and transport step in the core missions, right?
That is an odd interaction, admittedly, from what I've seen characterized.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. What it basically is a moment, another like a play out of Infinity or something, where you keep secret. Excuse me, who is going to be your in your transports and who's going to be in strategic reserves, and you don't mention that to one another until you've both made those decisions, and then you reveal that. What's such a contrast to the ITC 2020 missions that we've been getting used to is before anything, you roll for who's the attacker defender, and that dictates turn as well. I was under the impression with quick glances over the previews since between here and then, that they had the attacker defender terminology into the mission. So I was like, okay, cool. That means first and second, But it doesn't. It appears that you'll roll to see who's the attacker and defender, which just plays into the mission rules. But still, after all the setup, with a you go I go setup, not a full deploy.
Alternating.
Which the last chapter approved that we got. That was when they did was it the chapter approved that did all the missions full deploy, or did it go half and half like the ITC?
It went half and half.
Just like the ITC did, right?
I believe that's accurate.
Yeah, because the ITC did. I think it was the missions 2, 4, and 6 were the missions that had full deploys. It was the even numbers, I think. And so, now that's not a thing until we see the Grand Tournament packet. Is the Grand Tournament packet going to go back to full deploys? And is that something that it seemed like the community had come to terms with that as being one of the more standardized ways. They were trying to remove the feel bads of turn. And there's a certain something about whenever you play with not knowing who's going to go first in the beginning steps, we're talking about...
You have to play cagey.
Yeah. And now, and currently, you get to know your turn when you pick your secondaries, when you pick the deployment zone and what side you're going to be on. As you deploy your army, you get to know all those things, and that makes a big difference in how you deploy, what secondaries you choose, and what deployment zone you want. Now there's no picking your deployment zone. You're not, and I say now until we get this Grand Tournament book. I was worried about how I didn't feel like the core rulebook mission, especially the preview one, was fleshed out enough. You can't just add secondaries. They had a progressive and in-game, so they have it seems like some of the missions are progressive in-games. That's where another thing to mention about the missions that's interesting that still has to be fleshed out more, I think, is the actions that happen in the command phase. Something I was interested about in the book is that there wasn't as much interaction with the command phase as I expected so far, and I think it's something that's going to be written into.
Added to, with new codexes.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I did want to touch on, like you mentioned alternating deployment coming back. I think actually that's a big reason, especially since they've removed, from my understanding, and you can confirm with me, they've removed the +1 to the roll to go first.
Yeah.
To deploy first.
Yeah.
So I think the alternating deployment with secret reserves is meant to add kind of that secret kind of like, so some of the older veteran players may remember it used to be you had to do reserves last for your deployment. Like that just always used to be a thing. In 8th edition, they turned that into something you gamed to get the +1 to deployment or not, kind of. Like you could literally toss them in reserve to just kind of not give your opponent information in terms of, where you were deploying. And now it's just very much, like, hey, like it's still, it's a secret kind of, I mean, it is, but, like at the end of the day, like if you know enough about your opponent's army, you can have an expectation of what things will be in reserve.
Right. Well, what's wild is like, the know thy enemy. You used to be able to have a pretty good idea of looking at some of these unit types and saying, okay, I know that these things can go in reserves and these things can't. But now in that moment, you're spinning stratagems and you're actually making decisions on a certain power level of your army, and it could be anything.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, that's something that I actually didn't stop to consider until you were mentioning that. You can now throw anything in reserve, really, and I mean that in itself is I think it adds an element to the game that's hard to plan for.
Especially with the fact that there's a lot of game to be played on the fact that now we can come in reserves after turn 3, turn 4, and turn 5. Which it is a 5-turn game now instead of the ITC 2020, or standard ITC 6-turn game. The only thing you really have to remember about that process when you put something in reserve. One thing that I found that was interesting that I didn't really know until reading the book was the nitpicking difference between the CP that you're spending based on the cumulative power rating that you have in strategic reserves. That isn't counting the stuff that already has a natural deep strike rule.
Yep.
I knew that stuff got to just do what it does, but I thought it was cool that it also didn't count towards the total of what's actually in reserve power rating wise.
That would suck to have that count against you.
Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting. So the coolest thing about the strategic reserve, besides putting things in reserve that never could be in reserve before, because that's great. Like it was a big deal, a chapter approved times like 2 chapter approves ago when they gave Space Wolves an outflank stratagem or some shit before the Space Wolves Codex, and it was like, yay, we have an outflank stratagem for infantry. Well, guess what? Like everybody can do it now. And it's the one thing just to define with you, Chris, that I was trying to. Sometimes this terminology can get hard to remember in your head here, but they're saying that so on turn 2, you can come in wholly within 6 of any edge that's not in the enemy's battlefield edge or deployment zone. It's basically can't hit their deployment zone. So I guess what my question is, the battlefield edge, is that the longest edge of their deployment zone?
I think it's the one on their back end, but I could be wrong.
That's usually the longest one, I think. Maybe not.
I mean, not for hammer and anvil.
Yeah, I guess not. Yeah, that's what I couldn't necessarily find a definition of the battlefield line, and I thought, okay, you're dumb, George, because you don't know it. Battlefield edge, but so basically that's the difference between turn 2 and turn 3 plus is that can't go into the enemy deployment zone, can't go in the enemy's battlefield edge. That's because you come in within 6 inches of the board edge, wholly within, right? And so you come in wholly within more than 9 inches away from an enemy unless you're in your own deployment zone. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a sec. But 6 inches from the table edge, just not in the enemy deployment zone, not on the battlefield edge. Turn 3 on, it's wholly within 6 of any battlefield edge that's not the enemy's battlefield edge. So I guess you just can't come in directly behind them is what I'm getting from that.
Basically.
If it's Dawn of War and they got that whole long edge of the table, you can't come in directly behind them. It's on the left or the right, or your side, basically.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting that while that is cool, that's not and the fact that you can do it to units that never could do it before. What's powerful is the idea that you can do it in your own deployment zone that isn't restricted within 9 inches of enemy models. You can be so close to enemy models, you can actually come in from reserves and go directly into combat, counting as making a successful charge.
Yep, dodge Overwatch.
Yeah, so that's a big deal. That's something that's been mentioned before. And with stuff like that, it gets hard to judge. Like, I've been going through these emotional battles of like my horde play and my combat, but there's certain rules that are like so powerful and game defining and changing that it's like, well, I can't say too much till I play with that a little bit more. Like, for instance, bloodletter bombs or putting Nurgling. I was thinking about this more and more, like the Denizens of the Warp or some webway whatever for Eldar. Like, several forces have a stratagem that allows them to put things in deep strike, right? And for demons, I'm used to dropping 6 CP to drop like 3 units with a 3d6 charge and these bloodletter bombs, or you maybe you want to do more. Like, I'd love to put some Nurglings in reserve and deep strike them, but I don't want to spend the CP on it. Well, now like Nurgling units are super cheap on their power rating. So for that 1 through 10, that single CP, you could end up outflanking or coming in from the board edges with several units for one command point. I think 2 power. What's the power rating of a Ripper squad, right?
I think 2, maybe 3.
2, maybe 3. So let's assume
I think 2.
I bet you 2. So just to assume Nurglings are about the same. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. That's 1 CP to get 5 of those guys in reserve.
Granted, they could already deep strike, but
they infiltrate deep strike. They deploy deep strike. They don't deep strike later in the game. See what I mean? And that's what's powerful is those late game strikes, and that's what your Rippers get by default, but my Nurgle don't. So that also goes to things that for the Denizens of the Warp, it's related to power level on how expensive it is. So the moment I go to 8 power level, or maybe, excuse me, it's either 8 or it's 9, it goes to 2 CP instead of 1 CP to do that Denizens of the Warp. Now by just
it's power level based, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So now I might be able to get 20, or like usually I'll do a 20-man squad and no more, just because it keeps me at the 1 CP cost for the deep strike. But I can actually go to 2 or a 30-man squad for less CP, paying only 1 CP if I just outflank in and have a 3d6 charge from reserves.
Right.
So it's just the idea is that certain things that we're used to spending CP on could actually be cheaper than it was before for stuff that we're used to deep striking, and then of course the ability to put stuff that we haven't. And I definitely play with the idea of those super cheap units. Just a unit of Brimstones or a unit of Cultists that are walking on turn 5 could be a game-winning move.
For sure.
Yeah. So something I can't see the comments very well. Like, I'm looking at them. I don't know if anybody's hollering out. We got pretty much. I got all of these things spreadsheeted out, and we could talk about anything. I don't know if there's anything burning at your mind, Chris.
Ladies and gentlemen, in the comments no one is commenting as a heads up. But if you have any specific questions, please holler out. George may be able to answer you. That being said,
just want to make sure. Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't so much have a specific questions. I think it's more of an interesting concept because, so this is something that you've been discussing recently, and I've commented on to some degree in our chat. Games Workshop throughout the tease process has said, hey, don't worry. I mean, we can see all these hits to horde play from morale and the blast rule and this and that, but you're still going to want to take troops in 9th edition. And they have told us that over and over again. And it seems like the biggest incentive to me almost is in building your army.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The quote that stuck with me was that they said that you're going to want to take troops just as much as you do now. When they were just, and so to me, that's like, why do we take troops in 8th edition? We take them to farm CP and we take them to screen. And I think it's still relevant is that we have to take them to fill our, we talked today about army, what is an army going to look like, right?
Yeah.
And, now we're seeing that I was theorizing particularly that factions that don't have sub-factions that are going to do their best to stay within singular battalions. And really only go beyond that to do one of two things, and that's either get more HQs, which I think is going to be the most typical, because the Supreme Command is dead as we know it, and we're all so used to easily being able to be like, I want 3 to 5 HQs. I'll take that, and then I'll also
Let me
take
hero hammer it up.
yeah, and I'll take the special detachment benefit at that. But now you're not going to be able to easily just have a detachment of HQs that provide that. Yet at most you can have a detachment of 2 HQs with 1 troop for every one that you do that at. But basically, I think that Custodes, Death Guard, Death Watch, things that don't have their clans or sub-factions or seps or whatever you want to call them, legions, hive fleets, the ones that are singular, they're going to be trying to... the battalion is up to 5 of any of the force orders when it comes to, besides flyers, or Lords of War, of course. That's another interesting thing too, just jumping around, is how the flyer detachment's been taken away, and now we discovered that there's 2 flyers per every detachment. And
Yep.
one rule, like, was this written so long ago? Like the stupid Drukhari rule, they have this faction-specific rule that if you take 3 patrol detachments, then you get refunded like 4 command points, or you get 4 command points. And it didn't really make a ton of sense before, but it makes a lot more sense now for some weird reason, because it allows Drukhari to take 6 flyers and still have as much CP as they would if they were a battalion. And here's why, is because what's interesting, and I'm saying this kind of jarbled here, is that the battalion, the brigade, and the patrol are the only detachments that refund command points for having your warlord inside of them. If you take your Supreme Command detachment, which is now restricted to just basically a Primarch, Demon Primarch, or Supreme Commander, then it'll allow you to still get the refund of taking a battalion or a brigade.
Yep.
But only if that detachment matches the same faction as the Supreme Command detachment, which is forced to be your warlord. So it has its restriction, and here's a big part of what's curious and exciting is, just like we were talking about, the command phase is new, and a factor that's been integrated into the game but doesn't have much impact compared to what it will in future as we go along. Because, like, for now we have, you basically get a command point back. It's when you basically tally your score up, and basically only the Necrons are the ones that have built into their rules that we've seen so far, mechanics that activate and happen inside of the command phase. And as we think, they're going to be the first codex to drop as well. What were we saying is also like the command phase? That's practically, we were just talking about it.
There's a few things with actions that score in the command phase.
Yeah, just detachments, right? So, you only get your CP back. Oh yeah, the Supreme Commander. Supreme Commander is something that we haven't seen in 8th edition, and we're curious of what's going to happen in 9th edition. I was talking to Austin Wingfield the other day, and when he saw the book, the first thing he did was flip wildly through it to try to find the Supreme Commander list, because it seems to be the general hope that this Supreme Commander keyword that's been listed in the Supreme Command attachment is going to be something that, just like we got a list for all the blast weapons, we're hoping we get a new list that provides us all these Supreme Commander keywords. Because there's a lot of things that don't have Primarchs,
I would expect the Swarm Lord to probably fall under that. I would expect
Silent King.
The big, maybe like Chapter Master Voldus or Drago for, Grey Knights and stuff like that. Like, the big leader named characters is what I would expect.
Think of the the Emperor's Children, like all the different legions have like some cool character guy, right? Like hell, even Ragnar might be a Supreme Commander. Maybe Bjorn's a Supreme Commander.
Yeah, I would expect. Yeah, that would make sense to me.
Now, my hope and prayer, dude, is that what if they make like Scarbrand or Scabathrax or Shalaxi, the named demons, be Supreme Commanders? That would be so cool on a fun side of things. Just because you'd be able to take the Supreme. One thing that Austin was talking about, being able to potentially cheese it in a way, because the Supreme Command, it's not easy to fill that slot. There's a very limited, restricted amount of things that could be. It's a Primarch or something with Supreme Commander. But because it's a detachment that still provides that detachment benefit, it's a way to gain another detachment keyword for free. It doesn't cost CP technically. Well, or it'll be a minimal. I say to gain another detachment CP, you would have to take it, and it would have to be your warlord, but you would take a different detachment keyword from your other. But it's basically it's only 3 CP. I don't know. I guess that's not. It's a way to take a singular character and gain another faction keyword, basically.
Yeah, I mean, you take one modeling and another faction keyword.
Yeah, it's points efficient, and that's something that you have to mention now because super heavy auxiliary detachments, and fortification detachments don't provide detachment benefits. And they say in the book that every codex, and apparently, we could never really consider this, but like right in the beginning, it says if you're this faction, you gain these abilities.
Yeah.
Those abilities are not something you get to have access to if you're one of those three types of detachments of the auxiliary, super heavy aux, fortification.
Yeah, and so that's actually something that I mentioned today, and this is faction specific for me in general, but like a lot of the detachments I've been taking for Genestealer Cult, I've been spamming units that don't actually get their detachment benefits anyway, because we're odd codex where we have units that don't gain detachment benefits ever. Specifically the Patriarch and Brood Brothers. So considering that I've been worried about GSC with the new character
specifically
rules,
the Patriarch and Brood Brothers,
I'm definitely content to see that I can still basically use them the same way I'm using them now. But that's just kind of a tangent on like my own personal list building. I don't know. It's definitely going to be very different approaching how to craft these lists. I think you're correct that we're going to see a lot more mono keyword lists. Like you may see, like I've been running more like all Hive Fleet Chronos when there was a time that I would be taking 3 Hive Fleets like all the time.
Yeah, the triple. Whenever the people that like to rely on taking 2 to 3 detachments in order to gain different sub-faction key traits like Chronos and Kraken or what have you, I think now what we're going to see more commonly, unless you're a troop-oriented faction, you're going to want to take as little tax as possible to gain additional detachment benefits, and that's probably going to be the patrol detachment because. What's weird is the Outrider detachment, the Vanguard detachment, and the Spearhead detachment, they cost 3 command points. They cost the exact same as a battalion.
Ooh.
But they don't refund any command points if your Warlord's in those detachments like the battalion does. So if you basically, the only reason you would take those, one of the few reasons you would take it is if you didn't want to pay the tax of taking 3 troops. But you gain 3 CP if you just take a battalion and fit everything you need to within that. Anything you need outside of that battalion in force organization, whether that be HQs or basically a 6th or 7th, because you get 5 force orgs of a particular type, heavy, fast attack, elite, in a battalion. So only if you need a 6th or 7th fast attack, elite, or heavy would you take a patrol, or most commonly because you would need more characters. And the patrol, because it's the cheapest command cost. It's only 2 CP versus the 3 CP that an Outrider, Vanguard, or Spearhead is. And you can basically take 2 additional of a particular force org with a tax of 1 troop slot. So that's what I see going down is people wanting because usually when people take double battalion, people are often used to playing with 2 HQs. Some people are used to playing 7 to 8 HQs, and they're definitely going to have to figure out new ways to tighten that up or else spend a lot of command points for sure. Or be taxed a lot on the spin, basically they're going to be not only spending CP, but also being taxed the troops to take like battalions or, they're going to be taking Outriders or whatever, It's going to be weird. I don't think we're going to see near as many Outrider Vanguards as we did in the past.
Yeah, I think Games Workshop honestly is taking a concerted effort at cracking on those detachments a little bit. I am of the opinion that they look at it as a way to crack down a little bit on min-maxing. I don't know that that's explicitly the case, but it's definitely an attempt, whether intentional or not. Robles was asking in the chat, how do we feel with the new reserve rules? Because you can throw Titanic in there, correct? With the reserves?
Yeah.
How do we feel about something like Mortarion and 20 Plague Marines in your backline on turn 4?
Yeah, I think it's great. That's a heavy point investment. So if they can't kill you enough to, I'd be like fucking racing to kill my opponent before those guys got onto the board personally. But it could be hard going against Nurgle,
Also, I mean, you're playing in that scenario down a lot of points for most of the game.
Yeah.
And since it is only a turn 5 game, Morty and his friends better win the game in 2 turns.
Yeah, that sounds really risky. But I mean, hey, it's a thing though,
Yeah, it's definitely something you got to be worried about.
And see, that's the thing, though, is that if now you could build an army to say, because usually turn 1, turn 2, the whole problem is your enemy still has the tools to take down Morty or Magnus or any other
Yeah.
cool toy. But if you made your army built to support those guys to kill the targets, you'd be like, okay, what in the game kills Magnus and Morty or whoever your favorite big toy is? I'm going to bring the troops that kill that the best. And put those guys in reserve, and then as soon as you kill those guys, hopefully by turn 3, then you bring them in and wreck the rest of the game because there's nothing that can stop them at that point. That could be awesome.
Yeah.
That could be awesome. I like the idea of it because the thing that's, there's going to be interesting cat and mouse too, Chris, because you know how like sometimes people will choose second, like when you both have deep strikes and you're trying to counter deep strike one another.
React.
Right, and now, because they're not forced to come in turn 3, you're like, okay, I'm going to wait this game out to turn 3. I know he has to come in, so I'll just wait it out till then. Now, that could be devastating to your enemy. You could make him be like, all right, surely he's coming in turn 3. Nope, I'm not coming in. Not coming in. They're like, fuck, what do I do now? I needed my guys on the board,
Yeah.
I could see
There's
that
a lot
happening.
more forcing each other's hands in that regard, or
Yeah.
for a longer period of time.
I remember I was hopeful whenever we were getting the leaks that they were going to let us put stuff into reserve mid-game. I know that'd be powerful, but I was hoping that we could do
Well,
that.
there's still some factions that can that have things that can do it.
And then aircrafts too do that now.
Yeah, you can fly off the board and come back.
Which maybe I didn't pay enough attention, but I was pretty surprised to see how when aircrafts come in from strategic reserves, you can actually basically deep strike them. They don't have to come in tethered to the board edge like everything else.
Nice.
Did you know that?
I didn't catch that. I assumed they would fly on from like any board edge of their choosing, because that's how it used to be. But if it is like a regular deep strike, that is surprising to me.
Yeah, you basically can have them pointing in any direction you want and put them anywhere on the board 9 inches away from an enemy. Pretty badass. Because that is not... My computer's dying, of course. That is not what I thought, and it's different.
I did. I don't know if you could confirm this, George, but I saw some discussion. There was a mention that at some point in the rulebook, Games Workshop clarifies movement as being horizontal and across the board, which doesn't have a lot of meaning other than for counting as not having moved, you can still pivot. Because there are things in the game that, oh, if I don't move, I can shoot twice or stuff like that. Based off the mention of them defining movement as horizontal movement in a direction, I think I saw some people making the argument that, pivoting basically doesn't count as moving. I don't know if that's the case or not, though.
The pivoting thing, I haven't paid enough attention to the closest detail of pivoting. Does pivoting count as a move yet?
Yeah.
That'd be something I'd have to look at closer. I've always that is always such a. Hopefully they did define it, dude. Maybe they did. They've been pretty good. One thing I will say that also is not in the leaks that are out there is how cool. Dropping everything here, trying to readjust. How cool GW did on putting the FAQs that we know so well. We know, a lot of us have memorized these 8th edition FAQs, and some of them more like, what is wholly within? What is an inch within a model within an inch? Like when they say, being within an inch. I've had people argue that the actual inch mark is not within an inch, and shit like that. Well, they define all that in the rare rules section, and they have a nice glossary in the back that does a pretty good job of indexing you to places in the book. So it's kind of nice to see a lot of the definitions we've seen in FAQs be translated into the book itself. So I'm gonna go to pivot real quick. Unfortunately, pivot is not in here, so it'd probably just be back to the movement. There wasn't, as much as I thought there was going to be, there wasn't a lot of visual aids to like a unit. There's no pictures of a unit in coherency. As much as like in past editions, they don't even have I don't even think I saw a picture where they're like, here's a guy on a ruin, because now you can be in engagement range to fight something if it's 5 inches above you, and they don't even put a picture example of that. weirdly enough.
Interesting.
Yeah, they did do weird, unlike them though, long paragraphs. Like I was looking for the modification that maximizes and you
Plus
can
one
only,
hits and wounds.
yeah, and I swore it was going to be a little like bullet on the side or some shit, but it's just like in the midst of a very long paragraph of how inflicting wounds work and shit, or to roll to hit. But yeah, I'll see if there's anything about pivoting in the movement, but I think they do say it in this weird riddly way. I'm definitely not gonna, as much as I got to give them credit, this is a better written book than some of their others, and it's decently organized. They still say some things stupid long when they could make it a lot more simple and easy to understand.
How dare they?
I
Games
know.
Workshop, if you're listening, give me a rulebook.
Like, I swear to God, it'll sound like I'm giving like a legal addendum if I try to tell you what it says to move a model. Yeah, it's going to be like, I'm literally going to sound like I'm trying to decipher a fucking legal document if I try to tell you how moving a model works. So I don't know if you guys are arguing out there whether pivoting counts. Good on you. I really don't. I'm just gonna move what feels right, and if my opponent tells me I'm doing it wrong, I'll look at him weird. And I don't know. I haven't got that part figured out yet.
So how do you feeling about these new Primaris Marines, man?
They look cool, dude. I will say I got to see the Indominus box start to get built, and the Marines look sweet, dude. It's funny how many decorative bases. One, there's a shit ton of Storm Shields in there, and two, it is funny how many dead Necrons they put on the bases of the characters in the box. My buddy was like, I hope there's a bunch of dead fucking Marines for these Necron bases, because this is crazy. The one thing that's interesting is a lot of folks have been arguing about that that there's data sheets that you can see that I haven't looked too closely at for the little mini book that's inside the Indominus box set, and it gives some of these Primaris Marines storm shields, and these storm shields have a different way of how the rule works from the traditional storm shields that we all know. Usual storm shield is a 3+ invuln. Now it's saying that it's a 4+ invuln with +1 to your save, your armor save.
Your characteristic.
Yeah, so you become like a 2-up armor or a 4-up invuln with the shield. And people are assuming that's how all storm shields are, and that to be blanketed over. But apparently GW has made clear in a live stream or something to say no, that's not the case. Don't just copy and paste that storm shield to all your others. This is a different data sheet with its own definition of what this storm shield is compared to the rest. And interestingly enough, the storm shields that are in the Primaris spot in the Indominus set, I don't know, did Primaris not have storm shields before? I'm pretty sure they did, right? Veterans and shit.
They did not. They were pretty restricted, I think, in their war gear, honestly.
Interesting, because they are some big ass shields, dude. Like, they are not the usual shit you see. They're like these monstrous things. That's one thing to be noted. You can't just assume. Like, there has been another topic where somebody, my friend Bobby, was trying to tell me that that horrors would not, because they mention in reinforcement there is a small change of reinforcement points too. Now it doesn't matter as much because back in 8th edition, the reinforcement points didn't count as points that were in tactical reserves. And your tactical reserves were, you had to actually calculate half your army being in reserve and half of it not, and it had to come in by turn 3. So if reinforcement points were a part of tactical reserves, then you would have to spend them by turn 3 or they'd go to waste. So it didn't work that way. You could summon things in turn 4, turn 5. But now reinforcement points do count towards how many points you have off the field and on the field, basically. But it doesn't matter as much, though, because we can still bring things in turn 4, turn 5 anyways, so it's no big deal. But it's something to take note of. I was on a tangent, forgot where I was going with it. Reserve points, things happen.
Horrors.
Oh yeah. So horrors, like, you can't just copy paste your expectations. The codex is, because of this weird thing that they've done, if we look at 7th to 8th, they just deleted all the books. And they're like, here's a brand new set of books. Now we're going from 8th to 9th, and they're saying you get to keep all your books. And we're going to give you new books over the course of time. And that's totally different than how they did it last time. And a lot of things that they hashed out and defined as far as how a data sheet works and what is a keyword and faction keyword versus regular keyword and etc. That's all been pretty well defined. Well, one of the things that that says on the 8th edition horrors data sheet is that reinforcement points you have to pay. You have to horrors that the split rule. You have to have reinforcement points set aside for it. And some folks are like, well, 9th edition says that anything you add to your army, you don't have to pay for. So that trumps the old rule that's on the horror data sheet. No, it doesn't.
Data sheet.
The 9th edition codex or rules don't necessarily, they're not going to, when there's conflict or overlap, you're going to still have to kind of go by what your data sheet says. Hopefully, Chris, we're going to see some FAQs, right? We're gonna need some, which is something else we should mention. We had a nice discussion today about the Lookout Sir rule.
Yeah.
That I think deserves an FAQ, even though I can agree that it seems kind of cut and dry at the same time, at least by intent. But hopefully, some others that hear this will probably already are familiar with it. But we've heard that. So, Lookout Sir is this new character targeting rule, and now you can't target. You can, just like before, you can only target a character if it's the nearest enemy. But now, unless it's only if it's within 3 inches of a monster, vehicle, or a unit that's 3 or more. So if a character's standing out in the open, you can shoot him. If he's within a unit 3 inches or more, that's 3 or more, monster or vehicle, you can't shoot him. Okay. Well, the question is, if you put, say, 2 demon princes next to each other, or say Murderfang and Bjorn, which are 2 characters and 2 vehicles, do they then cancel each other out so they can't be seen any longer? The Lookout Sir rule states that as they FAQ'd in the past, characters don't block characters when determining who's the nearest enemy.
Yeah, but it only specifies for nearest enemy, and if you have another unit that is closer to the shooting unit, it would seem in this instance where normally you could pick out a character, it reverts almost kind of like to 8th edition character targeting rules. Yeah,
like basically, if 2 demon princes were the closest thing to shoot, then you could shoot either one of them, and they're not going to make one be closer than the other. They're both characters under 9 wounds. You could shoot either one. But if, let's say, there's some Nurglings in your way that, where normally you could shoot a demon prince standing by itself because it's not within 3 inches of anybody, even though it's next to another character, you would think that a character doesn't block characters. A character probably doesn't allow another character not be seen. But if it has the monster or vehicle keyword, does that mean that they then cannot be seen? And what's a funny interaction is, like, say you take Murderfang and Ragnar. Ragnar doesn't have the monster keyword. So if Ragnar is standing next to Murderfang, then Ragnar
blocks Ragnar.
But Ragnar doesn't block Murderfang.
Correct.
Yeah. So it's a niche instance, but was it on purpose or is it a slip?
So Awesome Sausage is saying that, and I believe I saw something alluding to this. Games Workshop has commented that there will be a day 1 FAQ for this.
Okay.
But besides that, also Big Cleat is proposing if we think that Tactical Marines, Terminators, and Rhinos and Razorbacks will be basically obsolete because of Primaris releases. I don't super think so. They like to sell models, so new stuff is definitely going to be. I almost, we definitely have said before, new stuff tends to get good rules, but at the same time, you look at new detachments, they want to sell troops, and Primaris do fall into troops, so don't expect them to not be good.
Yeah, one thing I was raging over the last 2 days about how I was upset that transports didn't really change. And in fact, there is one change that just made them even a direction we weren't even expecting. And that's that now, whenever you're dictating half your shit on the board or off the board, if it's inside of a transport, that's half your points. That counts towards the points and units that are off the board. It used to be They're in a transport on the board so that they would count as an on-the-board unit. And now they no longer do. They count as an off-the-board unit. And that's different, right, Chris? They were always they used to, if you put something in a Rhino, it would count as an on-the-board unit, right?
Correct. I mean, even, like, there was a way to cheat that in 8th, is currently, since it is still 8th edition, where, when you're doing your alternating drops, you could get 2 units on the board for 1 drop selection when it was alternating deployment.
Yes. Now you can't do that. Yeah. And now if you put 2 units in a transport, that's 2 units that are off the board towards your off-the-board count.
As a matter of fact, they had specifically FAQ in 8th edition that stuff inside of transports that had auras didn't have their auras come out of transports. So, I mean, that kind of is in line with them not being on the board, but it had to be specified in 8th edition, and it still counted as being on the board. So it's an odd one.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I was wanting to see the most is just I wanted transports to have a way to kind of move and get out, have a little bit more of a salty feel. Kind of the feeling that a drop pod gives. Like, I will bring a drop pod because I get to deliver it to a place on the board and guys get out immediately. And any other transport I take, it doesn't operate that way. They have to drive somewhere, stay there an entire turn and then get out.
Yeah.
And they unfortunately did not change it at all.
Yeah. I mean, even I know we've discussed prior editions before, but so assault transports used to let you disembark and then still, get out, move, et cetera, But there even used to be with old transports where, if you moved half your movement distance, you could still take some kind of movement. But there is nothing like that. They literally were just transports are fine.
Yeah. We got the desperate breakout for 2 command points where if now just one more way. It was cool that you could surround somebody's vehicle, and if you blew it up, the guys couldn't get out. You killed everybody inside. That wasn't an easy maneuver. Now for 2 command points, your opponent can get out within 6 inches of the transport and potentially escape that being trapped inside. Which it's a heavy resource, so it's not a give me, but it's there. Emergency disembarker is what I meant to say. Desperate breakout's the one where you piece out of a combat. Yeah.
Yeah, the fallback one.
Trying to think of some of the fucking terrain sheet, Chris, is deep.
Oh, dude, I saw that flowchart. I think it's really overwhelming to look at first. It's very daunting because there's so many keywords.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and this is a point that I made in the chat as well, if you think about terrain the way we play it in 8th edition right now, it's almost like we're already playing with terrain that has, 2 or 3 keywords.
Yeah, no doubt. No, it's not going to be that crazy. It's really just wrapping your head around it, especially, and I think, again, the GT pack's going to help a lot when it kind of makes it less ambiguous and kind of defines a little bit more as far as what you're going to expect on the board, so you can start to kind of memorize, because several of these you're not going to experience. In a match play game, you're probably not going to go up against many inspiring terrain pieces. Or even ones that have an exposed position, and probably very little that even have an unstable position, which is considered kind of impassable as we know it. And really, overall, it becomes even easier to think about is that there's only 4 terrain categories. So all terrain generally fits into these 4 categories. Is that an area terrain? Is that an obstacle? Is that a building? Or is that a hill? And then inside of those, they're going to have they have 9 different features. And out of those 9 different features, those are the ones that are going to become even less, that you're going to see a lot. Like craters, armored containers, barricades and fuel pipes, battlefield debris. I doubt in the match play like GT packet, we're going to see very many. All right, every board needs 2 armored containers. Every board needs 2 craters. Every board needs some barricades and fuels and pipes. Here's battlefield debris. I think these are rules that help define narrative pieces terrain / everybody's terrain. They're trying to make everybody's shit that they have be worth something, not just okay, they're not trying to make these little tiddly bits that we have floating around that don't really have much impact unless it's a kill team board. They're trying to be able to define it and give it some rules, basically.
Certainly.
So I think we're going to see, like, they have this industrial structure. I think we're going to see ruins, woods, hills, you know, and squeeze in some other stuff, and amongst those, it's really just about defining. Like, one thing that's interesting that's like you have to kind of build in your mind is obstacles, because if it's not an area terrain piece, then it operates with kind of the obstacle rule set. And I think what's weird, Chris, also I didn't know, Chris, is that I didn't see anything about vehicles and monsters able to really get terrain effects. Besides being like blocked from like the obscuring rule or something like that. Like, for instance, obstacles and area terrain, they're only affecting infantry, beast, and swarm.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true, and from what I've seen as well. And like it's also like with them defining terrain, one interesting point is like you mentioned, we're going to see hills, forests, ruins. Buildings is a keyword they're using basically exclusively for fortifications now, it seems like.
Yeah, makes sense. Which you don't see very much of, especially being that they didn't give fortifications their own. I really wish just like they killed the flyer detachment and then added 2 flyers to every detachment. Just add 1 fortification to a few of the detachments. That would have been great, but no.
Yeah, I mean, we've said that before in 8th edition too. It just seems like they really dropped the ball on that, especially considering it seems like, I mean, we've seen now there's the Hammerfall drop turret. There is the Necron, I don't know what the terrain piece is called or what it does. Like, it seems kind of like we're Sigmar, where like you have these fortification pieces that almost maybe Games Workshop wants to make more of a part of the game because it's selling models and it's also scenery and terrain, but like the rules are just prohibitive.
Yeah. The what was it? Just yeah. No, I was grooving with you. My mind went other places. Oh yeah, woods. The fact that woods are -1 to hit. Made them, they are way more impactful, because I guess one of the features that we're used to is woods have -2 to charge through, and that is now so you have terrain categories, features, and traits, right? And the ruins, the craters, the containers, the woods, these are all different features, and these features have different traits: obscuring, defensible, breachable, dense cover, light cover, and all that. Well, the -2 to charge, that's still something that exists in a forest because it has the difficult ground keyword or trait. And so and I don't think that, like there's not a lot of things that have difficult ground. Like craters have difficult ground, woods have difficult ground. So there's going to be only a few things, unless you want to get, more cool with your game board or more adaptive to the terrain pieces that you have, and you want to give things difficult ground. But that's that. It's not just -2 to charge now. It's -2 to move through, period, unless you have fly. So that's kind of cool. So now a piece of forest is a lot more impactful because it now gives you -1 to hit, which is crazy. Because that's just like, now we're getting that from a terrain feature. But I mean, the fact that, what blows my mind though, dude, is that like if somebody advances, they're like, oh, you're -1 to hit. Well, I might as well advance with this weapon now that has assault. If I have like assault weapons, cool. I can only be a max of -1 to hit. So you would, fuck it. Basically you're already -1 to hit because you're in some wood. So I'm gonna run with this guy, right?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, you're not gonna get worse at hitting, so why not?
Yeah, so that'll also be interesting, and which I like that's a little bit of a reactionary dynamic that's now implemented, which is kind of cool. But yeah, -1 to hit, I would say that's a big deal, but it's less of a big deal thinking of it like that. I'm still instinctual to like, oh no, minuses, they don't stack so heavily on the hits and the wounds, so it's not as devastating as it was in 8th.
Yeah, I mean, you're almost going to stack -1 to hit to cancel out people's plus hit. You know what I mean? Like, it's not so much to like, oh, I'm going to be -3. It's going to be like, I don't want you to have your +1.
Yeah. Another interesting thing, Chris, that was talking about terrain is that the now infantry beast swarm, well, beast keyword, like what has the beast keyword? Well, Fenrisian wolves do. I think that flesh hounds do for chaos. And one of the cool things that the beast keyword can now do is we can scale things that have the scalable keyword or the breachable keyword. Now my fast attack flesh hounds can go through walls, and they never could do that before. Now they can climb up on top of a building, and they even mentioned that like when you're like, Like, you can go through floors, like the roof and like if there's multiple levels, you can just go right through the ceiling and shit. You don't necessarily have to like go up it like a hill. You can just go straight up through the fucking ceiling. So that was interesting. That makes me more excited to potentially put some flesh hounds on the board, being that they can actually charge through walls and go up stuff. That's pretty big. Overall, looking at the pictures, like if you look at the standard Nova format of like the big L's in the middle, the hills on the side, the other small ruins, and then the two forests, you basically take that and you scatter in some smaller terrain pieces, these craters, or I think that we're going to see like craters and crates and just like smaller obstacle style terrain. Which I don't know, Chris, if you caught, the obstacle word is that infantry, beast, and swarm get cover when they're within 3 inches of a model of like the piece of terrain. So if you just had like a wall sticking out, like just a freestanding wall on the board, and you're within 3 inches of that, and there's no part of the enemy that can target your base without going over that piece of terrain, then you get the cover save.
And that is on a model basis, because it's like they could see models that were not near the terrain, then they can just not give you that bonus.
Yeah. Which is nice. That I like that they do all that gauging from the base. Like it's about seeing the base. It's not about the wings or the spiky bits on the model or anything like that.
Certainly.
So that's really contained. So yeah, like you said, it looks crazy, but it's not. It's easy enough. It's stuff that we're already familiar with. It's just kind of applying it, and it's mainly like it feels more crazy when you try to think about it in competitive play. But we can't really, like, I would be more like, how is this going to work? But because they're defining it, I believe there's a lot more to be defined from the Grand Tournament pack that comes with the chapter approved.
I agree.
So, one thing to leave this show tonight with is that we're really excited. I want to find out, I want to see a Supreme Commander list like Austin was pointing to. And see, because that could be very interesting to what dynamics that could play into the game. So Supreme Commander. I definitely want to see more command phase action, but I don't think necessarily we're going to see I'm wondering if they're going to give us like some universal command phase actions for like every faction, but I doubt it in the chapter approved. I don't think so, but I feel like there's going to be something, because usually it's more than just points. They give us something kind of saucy, like some new profiles or something of that nature, right? I'd like to think this. I'd like to think there's something cool. So, but there's still some good mystery, and just with the 9th edition rulebook itself, which most of it is available just looking on the Warhammer community page, we still can't necessarily play the game without points, and we still don't necessarily know how this game's going to be in a competitive scene.
Forge World.
Yeah, and Forge World. Yeah, there's a lot to be desired, and it's all coming very, very soon. So. Yeah. Anything else you want to gravitate over, Chris, before we jump off here?
No.
Yeah.
I need to know what the rules are. We're gonna see the app roll out this weekend, ladies and gentlemen, as it goes for pre-order. The teases they've put out have said that the army construction part, even if you're a subscriber, will not be ready out the gate. So that's kind of questionable if it's going to be ready when the rules actually drop out. Maybe it just won't be accessible during the pre-order time. I don't think that's been clarified. But all exciting things. I'm glad for the success of the app. I hope it does well, because if not, I'm just going to keep using Battlescribe.
Yeah.
But it's a good way for them to make money off of the books that so many people pirate.
Yeah. No, I like that. I like what they're doing with the app, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out. It should be cool. Yeah. Well, you guys out there, good luck with your adventures into the 9th edition, and we're here for you. We're going to have some games to be seen. The tournament league's going good. We're in the 4th pod right now. There's 5 people deep. We need a few more to go launch that one off. So if you're local to the area here in Richmond, Virginia, jump in there. I know we got one of your boys from Tennessee driving out here, Zeke.
Zeke's a cool guy. He's gotten a lot of. He's actually from more than one place, because he only moved here recently. But like quite a few of the teams that like attend ATC and a few of the other big cons know his name.
Okay.
Even David Heatwell, like when I mentioned Zeke, he was like, "Wait, is it Zeke S?" And I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "Yeah, I know him."
Nice.
So that's cool. And I think he's gonna really enjoy Battlegrounds. He's already only had positive things to say from the one time he visited so far. But yeah, it's exciting times, man.
Yes, it is. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us, and we will catch you next time. Keep taking